Hey everyone. Jeff, who gets a little ad spot before every Doctor Who episode as a result of his higher pledge point on Patreon, has chosen to use this week's ad spot to send a message. Hey gang, Jeff here from the War for the Tower. By now I'm sure you're sick and tired of corporations and public officials paying lip service to the problem of entrenched police violence and white supremacy. There isn't much one podcast can do to fix that, but as a supporter of the Unspoiled Network, I have a way of supporting some really smart and committed people as they use pop culture and literature to talk about the issues that matter most. Sure, most of what we do here is for fun, but you know there's more to it than that. The more you support creative endeavors like the Unspoiled Network, the more happiness and truth you help bring into the world. One really good reason for supporting the network is the new Mistborn series for $5 and up patrons. Those books have never been as relevant as they are right now in the midst of this current slow-moving apocalypse. Join me and my crew in supporting a network that's doing what they can to make the world a little bit more livable. You'll be glad you did. Thank you, Jeff, for throwing us some support. And also, I want to take a moment to encourage everybody to donate to the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you go on Twitter, there are countless leaders in the Black community sharing links for funds for bailouts. And I really encourage you all to donate to those if you can. And if not, there is a link to a video on our Facebook page, which you can watch in order to generate ad revenue without actually having to donate any of your own money in case you are not in a place to do that right now. So again, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/unspoiledpod, and find the link to that video, or donate to Black Lives Matter, and hit up Twitter. There are lots of links. I've shared some. Thanks everybody for your support. Black Lives Matter. This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 6, Episode 4, The Doctor's Wife. In this episode... No, River is not in this episode. In fact, everything about this episode is so creepy and upsetting. I was really not ready for it. And Rory finally gets to, rage... And it's all very unsatisfying because of how upsetting it is. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Jamie.
Girl, this shit freaked me out. I did not like it. I did not like it. I did not like it.
It's Neil Gaiman.
Is it?
Yeah, he wrote this.
Oh, God, that makes so much sense.
And also, it's Michael motherfucking Sheen.
Wait, Michael Sheen?
Playing the voice of House is Michael motherfucking Sheen.
Is it?
Yep.
Oh, I did not recognize his voice, not even a little bit.
I didn't either. And a month ago, I read something where he referenced being on Doctor Who, and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, Michael Sheen? And so I looked it up, and I was like, what?
That is so... Okay. Man, okay, yeah. Combo there. Because Neil Gaiman, he loves making shit very upsetting. So that, if I had gone into this knowing that he wrote this episode, I might have been slightly better prepared. Not saying that I want to be better prepared necessarily. That's some of the fun, is things catching you off guard a little bit. But, yeah, those of you who are not aware, I covered Sandman years ago at this point with Miles and Anton, and I think Owen guested on an episode at one point. So, yeah, the overall, nature of psychological torture that's basically happening here Makes a lot of sense now. I get it. Okay, cool.
They did one of the Doctor Who lockdown sessions recently.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually not that recently. It was sometime in April for this episode. And so I have a few tidbits from Neil Gaiman to talk about later.
Okay, cool.
I'd like to talk about the very upsetting experience I had trying to watch this episode today.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, HBO Max dropped yesterday.
Right.
Which is great timing, because today I need to watch Doctor Who. And now it's streaming again, and it's all very happy. So I start the episode. I'm so happy to not have to go through the rigmarole of putting the DVD in my Blu-ray player. And it was in Spanish. And I was like, what is happening right now? And so I'm looking at all the settings. There's nothing saying that it's switched to Spanish. I go and start Lord of the Rings to see if that's in Spanish. No, that's fine. I put on another Doctor Who episode. That one's fine. But this one was in Spanish. For no reason. The subtitles that I put on, because Matt Smith talks very quickly, sometimes I don't understand what he's saying, those are in English.
That's so weird.
And I was like, I know that for whatever reason, the minute details of this episode have never stuck with me. I watched this episode not that long ago and still could not remember anything about it. I don't know what that says about me, because I think this is a very good episode, but I couldn't remember like how it resolved itself at all.
Oh.
And I'm like, I feel like I would have noticed if the beginning of it was spoken in another language.
So you started to doubt whether or not the episode had been originally actually in Spanish?
I thought maybe they were speaking another language and it was always subtitled and I never noticed. I was really starting to question myself.
That's precious.
And so then I put in my DVD and it's in English. So something is up with whatever that file is on HBO Max. And I would love for other people to tell me if it's happening to them too, because it's the only one so far that I've seen that is not. And I actually went to the next episode once I finished watching this to make sure, like, the next one's in English, right?
Is it?
And it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
How bizarre. I wonder what's going on there. Like, HBO Max is just kind of like, I've been hearing a lot of people having various problems with it since it launched yesterday. But that is certainly the first I've heard of that particular problem.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any problems with it otherwise. I haven't played around with it too much, but what I have watched has been fine. I haven't had problems with it like freezing up or anything that I had heard. I know a lot of people yesterday were all watching at the same time, so this happened with Disney Plus too. The first couple of days were rough because everybody was like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." Mm-hmm. And now it'll level out.
I think that the thing that I heard is that it's not available for Roku yet.
It's not available for Roku or the Amazon Fire TV stick, which is what I had in the bedroom.
That's so annoying.
We have a 4K TV, so it just has the app right on the 4K TV. Mm-hmm. So that we got set up just fine yesterday. And then I was like, okay, let me go set it up in the bedroom too. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find it on my Fire Stick. So I do a quick Google and it turns out, it's not going to be on the Fire Stick. So I was like, all right, well, the Apple TV is going in the bedroom because we can watch HBO Max on the regular television. Mm-hmm. We don't need the Apple TV for that. And we can also watch Disney Plus on the regular television, which is what we really had been using the Apple TV for, was Disney Plus. Doesn't matter because we've got a Disney Plus app on the TV. So I brought it in the bedroom, and that's how we have it in the bedroom. I
only have the one TV, and it only is running off of the native Roku app that comes with the television. So HBO Max
you need an Apple TV.
Not going to be... I have like a membership to Apple TV that came free with the iPad, but I do not have an Apple TV device. So,
When's your birthday? Not till October?
Yeah, it's just kind of annoying because I had been sort of like one by one buying the episodes instead of buying the whole season, thinking that, it'll ultimately be cheaper because it comes in mid-season to be available streaming. So, and now finding out that like it's not even going to be available to me, I may as well have just bought the whole season. So I'm a little irritated by that.
I'm irritated too, because I thought you were going to be able to have HBO Max. I thought we all were, like, because it was good. I figured it would be everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, you know, I really thought that in 2020 we would all have agreed that, like, just make shit available on everything. Can't we just get along? But, oh well. Anyway, so this episode. I can't believe that you said that you didn't remember a lot of details about it, because I know that I am not going to forget a lot of this one. It is the very opposite of what I said about the pirate episode last week.
It's not because I didn't enjoy it, and it's not because it's necessarily like, I remembered that she was the TARDIS, and like I remembered her crazy Victorian clothing and her very like Tim Burton-y styling. Mm-hmm. I remembered the trash planet. I remembered a lot, but I didn't remember weird things like Rory and Amy being trapped in the TARDIS.
Girl, I don't even care about the TARDIS being in a woman. It's Rory and Amy that are what I will remember forever. First of all, I just last week was like, tell me if they will ever show us any other parts of the TARDIS.
I know, that's funny.
And then immediately next episode, there's like, you know, a bit of a tour and also mention of like redesigning their bedroom and the whole thing.
And deleting whole rooms.
Yes. Which...
No more pool.
That just seems rude. Like...
What is River gonna dive herself into when she jumps off the next building?
Yeah, that's true. I hope that they like keep her informed of the updates so that she doesn't go and like depend on that again.
They're gonna have to build some kind of like trapeze net.
But yeah, the whole thing with the two of them running up and down the hallways and the way that they get separated. Just the fact that this is Neil Gaiman just makes so much sense now. It makes so much sense now.
I remembered that they got separated and that, like, Amy kept finding Rory and he was, like, had been left alone for decades. I remembered that aspect of it. I just didn't remember, like, how they got there. It's weird what my brain just was like, don't need, delete.
I mean, the way that they get there, I can understand forgetting because it's so sudden. It's not like they do anything to cause it. It's something external just fucking with them. Yeah. So I can understand how that wouldn't really, like, stick with you necessarily. And it's just the effect of it that stays. But, yeah, man, I mean, I was literally, I just can't emphasize enough how much more sense this makes. Because when I was watching it, and we get to the part where basically it's a fucking corpse with Die Amy, Hate Amy written all over the walls, my immediate thought was, what the fuck is wrong with this writer? That they immediately go to, what if we make somebody who loves you and whom you love despise and hate the sight of you and want to kill you? That's just so deeply fucked up to even think of as like a tactic to torture somebody. And now, there it is. There it is. Okay. Shit. I just wasn't ready for this level of like, aggression is the wrong word. It's like, it's more subtlety, really, you know? Because that is something that I don't think a lot of people would think of if they're going to try and use Rory to torment Amy. The thought would be to hurt him in front of her. That is like what most of us would think of, is like watching somebody that you love be hurt and you can't do anything to help. That is quite enough for most of us. But instead, adding this other element of, we're going to hurt him, but you're going to miss that part. The part that's going to fuck you up is that he's going to blame you. And he's going to have spent decades blaming you. And by the time you meet them again, they will not even be recognizable to you as the person they used to be. Fuck, man. You know, like, it makes me think of what people can go through sometimes with Alzheimer's. Yeah. You know, and a person just kind of either not recognizing you or having like messed up memories that didn't happen. My aunt, who's going through that right now, her sister had been like taking care of her, and she started to think that her sister was like stealing from her, and like there was just this really high level paranoia that she was always being watched because her sister had like planted cameras in her house. So when her sister, who was just doing her best to help, would show up, she would have created these stories while her sister was away that, Catherine, who is the one taking care of her, doesn't know about. So Julie just starts lashing out when Catherine shows up and like, how could you do this to me? You did that to me. Where's my stuff? I know you took it. I can't believe you do this. I never want to see you again. And she like,
does she know who her sister is?
She knows who she is, but she thinks that her sister is against her. So she wound up like, there was this predatory woman living in the community that she was in. And she wound up signing over power of attorney over all of her like possessions and money and everything to this stranger. Because she believed that her sister was trying to get her stuff from her.
Do you think the stranger was planting those ideas in her head?
I think the stranger saw that this was starting and made it worse. And she eventually, we figured out what was going on, and she's been charged. And I don't know if she like went to jail or if she's like awaiting a hearing or what. But it turned out once we like reported her that she has done this with several other people as well.
Is she a person who works there?
Mm-mm. No, she was just like a neighbor. And my aunt had been like leaving and wandering around the neighborhood and getting lost and forgetting how to get home. And I think she noticed and realized like, oh, perfect.
So she's not in a facility.
No. Well, my aunt is now. But at the time when this woman was given power of attorney, she wasn't. And then by the time they didn't realize that she had signed everything over until they went to put her into a facility. And this woman tried to be like, no, we're not doing that. And my aunt was like, and who are you? And then realized that her sister had signed her fucking whole life over to somebody that she didn't know.
The other day at work, I said, I really can't stand people. And I'm probably in the wrong business for feeling that way. But
you mean being a human
being? People,
the business of being human.
That and customer service in general.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't stand most people. And I felt a little bad for saying it out loud, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
People suck.
Yep.
Most people suck.
Yep. It's true.
How do you, I just don't know how you can be that level of evil.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the levels of evil that we just keep seeing, perpetually.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't understand. How are you so miserable? Or how is it that this is the thing that makes you not miserable to cause suffering in others? I don't understand how you can become that way.
I really think people like that know so well how to lie to themselves. And I think that they have convinced themselves that they're not even doing this for them, that they really are pretending that they're helping somehow. I'm sure she was telling herself, well, maybe that is what's happening. I don't know. I'm not here all the time. For all I know, her sister could be doing this stuff and trying to steal from her. So I'm just trying to, be a unbiased third party here. I could definitely see somebody
I think she saw
lying.
Something and figured out how to take advantage.
I agree.
And I don't know how you can be that type of person. And instead of being let me help you. You're obviously lost. Let me call your family and let them know you're okay and let them know that you keep wandering. Instead, it's oh, how can I make this better for me?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah.
How can I take advantage of somebody who doesn't know what year it is or who they are?
Yeah.
That's a level of, what level of hell does that person go to? Is it the one closest to the fire?
I find the idea of levels of hell so hilarious. For those of you who have not listened to the Overdue podcast, which I guested on a few times, they do a patrons-only show called Hellboys, where they are reading through Dante's Inferno.
Oh, boy.
And it is so hilarious.
Dante is such a little bitch. Like, I can't get over the fucking self-important, and he wrote a fanfic, and it became this, like, piece of allegedly classic literature. Just because, I guess, it survived. Honestly, that seems to be all it is. By virtue of somehow, it has survived, and now we're like, yeah, wow, what an amazing, influential... It's not, it's trash. It's real bad. But I guess it's just old enough that we're all just going to pretend that it's, like, really amazing work or something. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, guys, make sure that if you are writing a fanfic, that you print it out, put it in some sort of waterproof, fireproof case, and bury it somewhere, and make sure your name's on it. And in 400 or 500 years, you'll be a fucking byword in literature and, like, the communities that discuss it, simply because you were one of the only pieces of available literature to find that wasn't, like, erased in the massive, like, robot takeover of 2025. Because everything else was digitized.
We only have 5 years?
Well, yeah, I figure, it's coming. So, anyway, okay, so this episode starts off super weird. I mean,
yeah,
we aren't even with our people in the opening. And they do that plenty of the time in this show. We'll start off with somebody else. But I feel like a lot of the time when we start off with other people, it doesn't tend to be like aliens. Usually when we're starting off amongst others, it's often humans that we're hanging out with.
Mm-hmm. Well, technically these are humans.
I mean, I was about to say, I guess you could call them technically human. So we have...
Patchwork humans.
Yeah. So we have Uncle and Auntie and Idris, and then the other one that we meet, who is an Ood, is called Nephew, I believe?
Yep.
Again, calling them these things makes this so much more uncomfortable. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's weird.
We could have just given them names, like, even if they weren't familiar names. But if they were given proper names, but to call them the names that you call, like, family, and the place that, the planet that they're standing on is called House, I just don't know why psychologically that gets to me so bad, but it does.
Well, it's definitely, it's a smart tactic to make you unnerved, for sure, because why is this uncle? Why is this auntie? Why is this nephew? Where did this start from?
Yep. Yeah, so...
And it also gives you that sort of fairy tale feel as well.
That's a good point.
And Neil Gaiman loves to rewrite a fairy tale.
Yeah, true. That is a thing. That a lot of times if you read a fairy tale, nobody will really actually have a name.
Right.
Maybe the main character does, but often it'll be his stepmother, his father. So the young farmhand went into the woods, or, and he's just called the young farmhand the whole time. And he'll meet the fairy witch, and the fairy witch said, and she's never given a name either.
Right.
Interesting.
There's Cinderella and the stepmother and the stepsisters, which I think in Grimm's, the stepsisters actually do have names. But in the Disney version, they're just the stepsisters.
I'm Googling what the stepsisters' names are now. What are the evil stepsisters' names? Oh, I love that Google immediately knew. Drizella and Anastasia. I'm getting a bunch of different, like, responses here, though, because that seems to be, like, the Disney.
That sounds like Disney, yeah.
Brunhilde and Winifred, Tatiana and Annabelle, Charlotte and Priscilla. There's, like, a list of the names that have been used.
What about just in the original Grimm?
That's what I'm trying to find. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I'll report back if I find it.
Okay.
Grimm's. In the first storybook, the stepsisters are named Clorinda and Tisbe. What?
No wonder they got changed.
That can't be right. Oh well. Alright, whatever. It's fine. So yeah. The uncle is saying to Idris, I only wish I could go in your place, Idris. And then says, well, no, I don't, because it's really going to hurt. And the Ood that's helping her out has this green light in his eyes. I say helping in the loosest way. Which is sort of, it's warning that there is something going on with it, that it isn't in charge of itself, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So she gets led onto this platform and she says, what will happen? And Auntie says, nephew will drain your mind and your soul from your body and leave your body empty. And she says, I'm scared. And Auntie says, I expect so, dear. But you'll soon have a new soul. There'll be a Time Lord coming. And that is the only clue that we get about exactly how this works. And it's still like, as much as this is a very unnerving moment that feels really, like sinister, there was a part of me that wasn't entirely sure if these people were doing something bad of their own accord or if they knew what they were really doing. You know what I mean? Like, there was a part of me that didn't entirely want to hold them responsible because it just felt like, really what it felt like was these people do not have any sort of the wherewithal to come up with this themselves. They do not seem to have it all together. So I had a hard time thinking they were truly in charge of the decisions. However, come to find out, they may not be the ones that came up with the idea, but they're benefiting from it, and they are aware of the overall harm they're doing, and they're fine with it. So I felt a little bit bad because I really kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt out of the gate, and they did not deserve it at all. So then we go to the doctor, who is telling Rory some story about how he reattached the head of some robot. Is this something that we remember? Did we see what he's talking about?
No.
Amy, when Rory walks by, is like, do you believe any of this shit? And she's like, I was there, and keeps walking, and she's being really weird. And it turns out that she is very much struggling with knowing that something's going to happen to the doctor eventually.
Yep.
She just doesn't, Rory is of the opinion that, that shit's not happening for 2,000 years. Why don't you just let it go?
200 years.
What did I say, 2,000?
Yeah.
Oops. But yeah, he's, and I get that. Honestly, I'm kind of on Rory's side here, where I'm like, I do know that it already happened for you guys, but there is a part of me that's like, man, that's 200 years away, and the doctor has really lived longer than anybody has any right to live.
Yeah.
And
he's 900 years old.
Yeah, part of me is just kind of like, he's getting another 200 years on top of this? I am not really... I feel like he's sort of cheated the system long enough, and if he dies, then, if he dies, he dies.
Yeah.
So,
I get that.
I'm not, eager for him to die, and I'm not trying to be heartless, but there is a point where I'm just like, man, this person has been alive for longer than a millennia. I feel like that's a good run. That, putting a wrap on that is nothing to sneeze at. I wonder how long the average Time Lord lived. Because they all can regenerate the way that he does, right?
Yes. Let's see.
So, do they ever how often do they actually run into problems and really die? I would imagine that they mostly live for a very long time. Because if they're on their own planet, well, I was going to say, if they stay on their own planet, they're amongst people who are similarly, equipped with the ability to... But if they're on their own planet, people are going to know, oh yeah, you got to double tap, or else that motherfucker can come right back. Whereas if you're out in the world as a Time Lord and people don't know what you are, it's not going to occur to them necessarily to double tap, because they're going to really think they got you. So you stand a better chance being amongst people who don't know what Time Lords are, because they aren't aware that you get a second shot, and so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm trying to see if there's some message board, but they're all sort of basing it on the doctor. Like, the only information that these people responding to this question seem to have is based off of just the doctor and his lifespan. So I don't know if it's something that's ever been talked about on the show.
Interesting.
Like, what's normal for Time Lords? Is he an unusual Time Lord?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no real, what's the word I want? Base example to go from.
Yeah.
So they're in the middle of arguing amongst themselves, her and Rory, about, how to handle this and what to say, and her attitude about the whole thing, when there is a knock at the door. And they are in the middle of deep space. There should not be a knock at the door. But There is a knock at the door. So the doctor answers it, and there's this cube sitting out there, floating around, and the doctor says that he got mail. And we find out that this is
It's a hypercube. It's the way Time Lords... signal? Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
It's a way for them to communicate across time.
Okay. Oh yeah, here it is. We wrap up our thoughts in psychic containers and then send them through time and space. There's a living Time Lord still out there, and it's one of the good ones. This is so tragic.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman, what the fuck, man? Who hurt you? Because that's all this episode is. It's just, how can I wring your fucking hearts to shreds? He's gonna have Amy get called out in this, horrifying moment by a Rory who honestly says what I had been thinking, except that Amy kind of redeemed herself a bit. And then we have the doctor really thinking that he is going to get a chance to, be forgiven, maybe find some redemption, and at least come across some brethren that are not dead. And no, sir, not a bit.
And then, for added torture, he gets to actually have fun with a human personification of his TARDIS. Mm-hmm. And he adores her. Because he loves his TARDIS. Mm-hmm. And she's his TARDIS. But I'm like, now I get to talk to you. And so he's, has his heart ripped out later when she can't survive it.
This is a mean-spirited episode. And I forgot, I wanted to mention too, he sees that there's a symbol, the mark of the Corsair.
The Corsair is the Time Lord. So he's the doctor. That's how I took it, is the Corsair is a Time Lord. That's his name.
Right.
That's what he called himself.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a symbol on it that's this tattoo that he had gotten.
I think it's like a snake eating its own tail.
Yeah. And the doctor says he got that on every body he was in or she was in. And I was just kind of how are you going to write this line about the doctor that, or not a doctor, a Time Lord that incarnates and occasionally is a woman when it does incarnate, and then be like, the doctor can't be a woman.
Well, because Neil Gaiman wrote this, not Stephen Moffat, and I have a little piece of trivia that goes with that. Let me just find where I copied and pasted it.
Dun, dun, dun.
I can't find it. Basically, Neil Gaiman did that on purpose. He seeded that in there.
Oh.
Time Lords can regenerate as women.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he did that. He did that basically so that there was precedent for it to happen. That's
saucy. Mm-hmm. I like it.
I respect it.
What a sneaky little bloke.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Doctor says that, yeah, there aren't any more Time Lords in the universe, but we are going outside the universe. I'm burning up TARDIS rooms to give us some welly?
I don't know what that slang means.
I don't know what that means either. You know what? I'm going to look up welly British slang. But okay. I definitely, I thought, let's see. This instruction, often shouted to a person as encouragement or criticism, asks for more effort to be put into whatever he or she is doing. Give it some welly. Okay, so it's basically him being like, so that it has more oomph.
I just thought it was referring to, we need to give it a little bit of a push.
Oh, so that's basically, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, neat. So goodbye swimming pool, goodbye scullery, sayonara, squash court 7.
Mm-hmm.
All right, listen. Does anybody enjoy playing squash?
I don't even know what squash is.
I always thought of it as basically like bougie racquetball.
Okay.
But
that's what I assumed, was that it was like racquetball.
Yeah.
But I never bothered to look it up because I don't care.
All I can think, anytime I think of squash, all I think of is fucking Frasier and how him and Niles reserved squash court and would play against one another. And one time they pissed the wrong person off and they died. They put their, I think it's Daphne, puts her pink panties into the white cycle. And so one of their neighbors turns up wearing bright pink squash whites, because apparently with squash you have to wear white the way you have to in tennis.
Do you have to wear white in tennis?
Well, I think the way that white after Labor Day is gauche, if you are part of that kind of culture, society, then you are supposed to wear whites for tennis, yes.
Then, yeah, I would say that squash is probably bougie racquetball.
Okay. But yeah, I just like the idea that he would squash court 7. I still have the other 6, so I think that's fine. We can make do with just 6, right? Do you think we need all 6, guys? No, we should probably keep all 6. Sir. Nobody likes squash. Do you even like squash? I bet he's never played squash once. And the TARDIS begins to go dark, and he sees that it's draining and begins to really panic. Obviously, we know just about how he feels about the TARDIS in general. And this is before he has met her. So he is very agitated by this right from the beginning. He says the Matrix, the soul of the TARDIS, seems to have just vanished. And that is not something that should be possible. And I really I'm always a fan of when the Doctor is sort of off his, outside of charted territory.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know what to do next. That's a line that happens actually later on, is him saying, I don't know what to do next. That's a new feeling. Although it's not entirely a new feeling, but, I get their point.
That is one of my favorite moments in this episode where I turned to Jason and I was like, God damn it, Matt Smith is so good. Because he has this like, that's new.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's concerned about it and then he brightens up and he's like all happy about it. Like, what? It's so cute. Like, what a good actor. He's just so good.
He has a lot to do this episode too.
Yeah.
Man, this intro though. His name is the Doctor, and he comes from somewhere else. Why did you do this, guys? I really thought when we discussed this new intro that it was the start of the new season, and that was it. I didn't realize at the time that this was something that was going to be at the beginning of every episode all season long.
It's actually not on my DVDs, and it was not on HBO Max.
Well, then what the hell? Man, I really need that HBO Max then, because this, and I'm assuming HBO Max doesn't do next time at the immediate end of the episode, right?
No, it does. That's part of the episode. Yeah.
That's annoying.
That's something they started doing with season 5.
I hate it. So yeah, they open the doors, they go out, the place is obviously like a dump. It is a trash heap outside of the universe. And
yeah, not a metaphorical dump. An actual dump.
An actual dump.
Smells like armpits.
Ugh. And the TARDIS here is like just, it's still physically there, and it looks like they have a way to get away, but it's drained, and there is absolutely nothing to get them the hell out of here if they do decide to leave. The Doctor tries to say that she's maybe just like out of energy and will refuel by them
they're
just letting her sit.
They're on rift energy.
Mm-hmm.
So like how in the first season, when that episode where the Doctor and Rose and Mickey come across that Slitheen again, that lady that you love.
Yes.
They parked in that part of Cardiff because it's on a rift and they could recharge the TARDIS.
Okay. All right. I see that. I forgot about how this starts off. So Auntie and Uncle are coming around the corner with Idris, who is yelling, "Thief! Thief! That's my thief!" And she comes running up to him and kisses him very hard, and then says goodbye, and then, no, not that one. What's the other one? Somebody mentions something about how she doesn't bite, and she's like, oh, biting, even better. It's like kissing, and I forget exactly how the line goes.
It's like kissing, but someone wins.
Oh, that's a good line.
That was, Neil Gaiman pointed out 2 lines in this show that Stephen Moffat wrote. And that's one of them.
I like that line.
And the other one is, hold on, because it's another good line. The line is, biting's excellent. It's like kissing, only there's a winner. Ah,
nice.
And then, when they realize that she's the TARDIS, and Amy says, "Did you wish really hard?" That's a Stephen Moffat line as well.
That's a good line. I like that one too.
He's a very good writer. He makes me very mad. Because those lines are really good.
And I love the Doctor's like mild embarrassment as he tries to defend himself. Not like that. Yeah, so this whole introduction, you see the golden light coming into her mouth and everything. Like, we kind of know what's going on here, but we don't really. And it's still unclear to us what is in it for Auntie and Uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about fucking Uncle here. I'm looking at the info here. He's played by Adrian Schiller, who was in a bunch of stuff that is unrecognizable to me. It looks like he was in the what is it called? The Beauty and the Beast that is humanized, humanoid, human-made, human people. Live action. That's the one. You know the
I
one?
was trying to figure out what you were getting at, because there's been a few. So, like, are you talking about the TV show, or the other TV show, or the new Disney live action one? Like, what is happening?
He was in the Disney live action Beauty and the Beast. I don't know who he was in it.
Monsieur Dark.
Oh, and he was in the Victor Frankenstein with Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy.
Oh.
Remember that?
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was in the BBC Three Musketeers, which I have not seen, and I maybe should, because there's a couple of attractive gentlemen in this.
I watched the first episode of that, and yeah, that guy that's in Snowpiercer is hot as...
I never saw that.
Oh my god! You need to see
You
Snowpiercer.
got so angry. I wasn't ready for that.
It's one of my favorite movies. You need to see it. It's so good.
Well, I brought this man up because goddamn is he good at being creepy.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. It's really like, I do not like it. The other woman is odd, but like in a way that feels almost endearing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I find them both off-putting, but yes.
Yeah, they definitely are.
She's got that sort of, you know the actress Carol Kane, who was in Scrooged, and she was also on The Unbeatable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yes.
And she's got this, like, dotty kind of energy. Mm-hmm. That's what she reminded me of.
Okay.
Was, like, a little bit of Carol Kane in there.
Okay, I see that. Yeah, so the other dude, he's just, like, really... He feels to me like somebody who's a, probably a low-key serial killer. Something isn't right there. And we wind up finding out, I mean, when you get down to it, they kind of are both serial killers.
Yeah.
When you really talk about what that word means. You're so right, though, about like the Carol Kane thing. That's a really good comparison. Is she dead?
No, she is not.
Okay. Because I was just realizing I haven't seen her in anything in a minute. And she should be out there just getting all the jobs. So they're talking...
God, right, of course, she's in The Princess Bride. The character that this woman plays is very Princess Bride Carol.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of, actually, was that the two of them feel a little Princess Bride-y in how odd they are. But the dude is certainly much more, threatening than her. She just feels kind of weird.
Carol Kane is still working. She's got something that's announced and the name of the character is unconfirmed, but it's announced. She's got a couple things that recently came out. Yeah, she's still out there.
Good for her. So they tell nephew, will you take Idris somewhere safe where she can't hurt nobody? And they mention the house, and the doctor says, the house? What's the house? And she says, house is all around you, my sweets. You are standing on him. And she has this really, warm smile as she says it that totally belies what the fuck is going on here. I hated the fact that I started to trust her a little. And then you find out that she's got some fucking dude's arm. The whole thing is just so unnerving once you actually find out what's happening here. Yeah. So they ask him, do you want to meet him? And the doctor can hear voices. And so can Amy and Rory. And she's asking, what were those voices about? And he says, they're Time Lords. It's not just the Corsair. Somewhere close by, there are lots and lots of Time Lords. And it's just, guys, it's so mean. What a mean, rude thing to do. This is like the equivalent of one of those sitcom episodes where they think they won the fucking lottery, but then it turns out one of them changed a number at the last second from what they had said they were going to put in. You seen those episodes?
Sure.
Oh, every sitcom in the 90s, I feel like, had a fake lottery win episode. And it was always treated as like, oh, isn't it funny? We thought a thing and now, no. And I, as a kid, found those to be so upsetting.
It's a bait and switch.
It's a combination, bait and switch, and also the person who, like, changed the numbers at the last second, I was always so furious at. And everybody has to sort of just be like, oh, that goofy guy who always screws up because that's his role on the show, I guess he just screwed up again. And I'm sitting there like they just did something unforgivable and I will never look at their character the same way again.
The episode of Friends where they are playing the lottery has one of my favorite things that Phoebe ever did. Because they bought like 200 and something tickets. And they were arguing over who was actually going to get to have the lion's share of the win, should they win, since they all sort of went in on it together. And she grabs all the tickets and runs out on the balcony, and then a pigeon flies at her, and she like screams and drops all the tickets off the balcony. And they lose most of the tickets. And so she calls and leaves a message as the pigeon apologizing, and she ends it with coo and then hangs up. So funny. It's so stupid, and I love it.
Oh my god, what on earth?
Don't be mad at the pretty lady. She didn't mean it. Coo.
Like, and that is some shit that I could forgive because that's an accident. Like, she does this thing. But when you, like, everybody has agreed on a set of numbers, and
that's
take it upon yourself to change that because you felt whatever. I think one of the episodes, do you remember Hanging with Mr. Cooper?
Yeah.
I feel like in one of the Hanging with Mr. Cooper episodes, they did a thing where she tells the cashier a different number because you're supposed to use your age as one of the numbers. And she
lied about her age?
Yes, she didn't want him to know how old she actually was. And they find out that, like, they think they won because they know how old she actually is. And then they find out that she lied and ruined their chances. And that was just one of those moments for me that I was just like, oh, nope, I will never, ever see you the same way ever again.
Did Community ever do this trope? Because if somebody messed it up, it would be Britta, right?
I would say it would probably be Pierce that would mess it up, but I could see either one of them doing it.
Yeah. Pierce would do it to be vindictive in some way. Britta would do it because she was like...
Because she Britted it.
Yeah. Because she Britted it.
Are you using my name to mean make a small mistake? But no, I don't think they did on that one.
I don't think they did either, but they like to send up typical tropes and turn them on their head. Mm-hmm. So I'm rewatching Community now, and I've only ever really watched it once, like when it was airing. So I forgot a lot of stuff. And man, that show is fucking hilarious.
It's super good. It has its lows in later seasons, but
well, we're heading towards the gas leak season, and I would love to skip it, except that I don't want to miss out on any Donald Glover.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so Idris is locked in this like little kind of prison, but it's like a jail cylinder. It's so weird. And she's talking to herself. We'll be sad. Will be sad. Why is that short word so sad? And that's like all the time that we get for her is in that moment. It's just like her talking to herself and saying a lot of things that don't make much sense to us.
Right.
She has told the doctor also that what's in those cubes are going to make him angry.
Yep.
And she is right about that, as we find out. She's right about everything. She's even more able to, like, know about what's coming than the doctor ever is. And it's interesting to have her inform him of stuff that he's about to say or things that he's going to go through later that he does not yet know about.
Because she exists sort of in all time and space at the same time. basically.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot.
It's part of the reason why the human body can't contain the soul of a TARDIS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she winds up lasting a little bit longer than I really expected her to be honest.
Well, yeah, because she says, this body has about 18 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And while it maybe happens in an actual 18 minutes of showtime, it seems like it's more time is spreading out on the show. Trying to think of how to word it.
More time has elapsed?
Yes, that's the word. Sure.
Oh, you just did what Owen does when he gets a little bit too stoned. And he'll find himself in the middle of a sentence not knowing how he got there at all.
I wish I had the excuse that I'm a little stoned.
Oh, God.
I don't. I just lost vocabulary, that's all.
Oh, God. Okay, so House talks here for the first time when they're talking about how we walk on his surface and we breathe his air and we eat his food. And he says, and do my will. You are most welcome, travelers. And Amy is like, what the fuck is going on? And Uncle and Auntie, as it's talking, have frozen and are not moving.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that continues, but they both sort of stop with their head tilted, and it's like unclear to me if they are forced to stop moving or if they simply are listening really hard and focusing, and so they've stopped because of that, you know? But yeah, he calls the Doctor a Time Lord, and the Doctor's like, aha! You've met Time Lords before, like continuing to get his fucking hopes up here. And this is when they say, many travelers have come through the rift. Like, their mouths are moving.
Yeah.
With him. It's real weird.
My notes say that House takes control of the three natives, which is it's auntie, uncle, and nephew.
Okay, so...
But the Ood, we can't see his mouth.
And they're considered natives? Because he calls them travelers.
No, everybody else are travelers. The Doctor and Amy and Rory are travelers.
Well, but, hold on. So you're like a sea urchin, big squashy oogly thing inside. That is correct, Time Lord. Ah, so you've met Time Lords before. Many travelers have come through the rift like auntie and uncle and nephew. So they're not really, I guess they're just being called natives like for the purposes of this show and how that works, but they aren't really.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I repair them when they break. So there are Time Lords here then? Not anymore. But there have been many TARDISes on my back in days gone by. And...
he makes it all sound so, like...
innocuous?
It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
There's been lots of TARDISes here. And it's later that we realize that everything we're seeing is basically refuse from TARDISes.
Tardi. Be here in safety, Doctor. Rest. Feed, if you will. And when he says that, Rory's response is, hey, so we're leaving, right? Thank you, Rory, for fucking coming through. The Doctor's the one who's just like, well, this planet seems friendly. Let's poke around for a bit. And I'm like... And then he does this fucking thing where he tells Rory and Amy that he doesn't have his screwdriver and that he left it in his other jacket. And these two go fucking back onto the TARDIS like a couple of real rubes.
He's trying to keep them safe.
Whatever. I don't buy it. He just wants to explore and look around without them pestering him to leave. Is really like the vibe.
Well, he really wants to find Time Lords. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to keep them safe so that in case it goes bad, they're not in any danger. He doesn't expect them to get... No, he did lock them in himself, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Look.
But he didn't expect House to take over and torture them.
Well, no, but like, they are your companions, and you don't get to just keep them locked in the TARDIS like a pet that isn't allowed out when you don't feel like dealing with them being, you know what I mean? Like, I got very irritated at his attitude with them here. I forgot about how this woman touches Amy's face with her man hand. She's got man hands. And the doctor, like, sees her face or sees her hand and kind of, like, gives a bit of a look like, oh, okay then? Yeah. And he says, come on then, gang. We're just going to see the sights. And sort of, like, invites them with him. And then later on, as he begins to realize that shit is not exactly what he thought, it's like he doesn't even... Because you're saying he is trying to keep them safe. I'm not entirely sure that's the reason. It just feels like he senses that they don't approve.
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's looking for Idris, who's yelling, thief, 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 over and over again. I really like that we find out later, she basically calls him her doctor, the way he calls her his TARDIS.
Yep.
And says that she, like, left herself unlocked because she wanted to see the world. And he's like, well, I stole you because you were unlocked. And she's like, yeah, that's what I just said. I was unlocked. What? Do you think that was an accident? You idiot? It's pretty amusing, right. Honestly.
She kept herself unlocked, hoping that somebody would be, as she says, you were the one mad enough to actually steal me. Mm-hmm. But she was just waiting for someone to try.
Yeah. And she was like a antique, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, she was already a little old when he took her.
So then we have the moment where Amy says to the doctor, you want to be forgiven, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that I don't think it's just I want to keep you safe, he says, who doesn't? And she nods and says, so what do you need from me? And he says, my screwdriver, I left it in the TARDIS. It's in my jacket.
Rory's like, the one you're wearing?
Yeah, you have just the one. And she tells him, don't get emotional because that's when you make mistakes. And begins to go and get it. And the doctor sends Rory after her because she tells Rory to watch over the doctor.
Yep.
But the doctor says, you watch after her.
So maybe it's not that he wants to keep them safe. It's that he doesn't want them to witness what could potentially be it could make him look really bad. Mm-hmm. Either because he'll not be immediately forgiven, or because he'll have to explain to these Time Lords what he did and why it's so important that he found them.
I don't like it. I don't like it. Like, I understand that in theory, but I want him to establish that the Time Lords are here and begin speaking to them about what's going on before he sends them off and locks them in. It's unclear to me if he locks them in or if House locks them in.
I thought House did, but then I think there's a line later where... No, maybe it's just because she says, unlock the door, and he said, I'm trying.
Okay, because, yeah, there's like a green light that sort of shines around the TARDIS that makes it look like it's House that did it to me.
These notes are saying, Amy calls the doctor, asking him where he said the sonic screwdriver was, and is told to have a long look for it. The doctor actually has it with him and locks the TARDIS with it. Okay.
Because, yeah, that green light really confused the issue for me. Because we see the green light coming out of Nephew's eyes. So I thought that when it was that green light, that was meant to be a signal that it was House at work. Do you know what I mean?
No, the doctor's screwdriver is always green at this doctor's is always green at the end. So.
Oh, okay, interesting.
9 and 10s, theirs were blue.
So they're locked in, and the doctor zeroes in on where these voices are coming from and finds basically a cabinet full of distress signals.
Yep.
And it's just a very sad, upsetting moment that I hated of him having to keep it together because now he is realizing that the people standing right behind him are enemies that he must be aware of. And he can't make any sudden movement or, behave the way he wants to behave. And he says, how many Time Lords have you lured here, the way you lured me, and what happened to them all? And Auntie says, House is kind, and he is wise. And the doctor's like, okay, so he said that he repairs you when you break, and he yanks off that dude's hat to reveal his weird alien ear that's hidden under this, odd makeshift, hat curtain that he has going on. It's like he's wearing a do-rag, but, the hanging part is off to the side instead of down the back of his neck. Your right arm is 2 inches longer than your left. Your eyes are only 30 years old. How's your dancing? Because you've got 2 left feet, which is amazing. And then this woman's arm is the Corsair's arm because she has that tattoo.
Yeah.
And he says something about how that's not her arm, but she's like, oh, but this has been a real good one though. He was real strong. As big a strapping big bloke, wasn't he, Uncle? I got the arm, and then Uncle got the spine and the kidneys. Yikes! I mean, that's horrifying. It's really, God, this is so gamey. I don't know how I didn't think of it. So yeah, the doctor says, you gave me hope and then you took it away. That's enough to make anyone dangerous. God knows what it will do to me. And they sort of lean away from him and he says, basically, run. But Uncle's Auntie, she goes running. But Uncle, for his part, is just what are you going to do now? You're stuck here. House has got your number. It's all over. It's too late. You're not going to be able to do shit about this. And honestly, I kind of felt that way myself. There was a part of me that was just you're really trying to act like you can call the shots. You are not on your home turf, sir. You are not even in the universe anymore. So they call him from the TARDIS and tell him that they are locked in. And he doesn't really explain to them what's going on. He just says, how did Idris know the boxes would make me angry? And they're like, what are you talking about? And then he just hangs up and leaves them totally hanging there with no idea what's happening. And I was just come on, man. You gotta give them some information here. What are you doing? Now, as far as Idris being infused with the spirit of the TARDIS, this is just to force them to stay, right?
He eats the TARDIS energy.
Okay.
So the heart and soul he puts in her, I don't really know why, but he basically feeds off of the TARDIS. But it seems like he wants to try to take the TARDIS and use it to get to their universe.
Right. Because being outside the universe, he doesn't have enough food, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that it's in her, though. Is it because he thinks he can control A person?
This says, but because he can't eat a TARDIS without blowing a hole in the universe, the House removed the Matrix and placed it inside Idris with the hope that it would die off on its own, far away from the console room, and then he can take control of the TARDIS. And then
don't understand.
By taking control of the TARDIS, then he can go through the rift to the real universe instead of feeding off of what falls through.
Repeat the beginning half of that again.
Because he can't eat a TARDIS without blowing a hole in the universe, the House removed the Matrix, which is the soul,
right, and
placed it inside of Idris with the hope that then it would die off on its own.
What would die off on its own? The TARDIS?
The Matrix.
Okay.
The part that controls the TARDIS. And then that way then he would be able to take control of the TARDIS.
So, okay, I'm getting it now. I'm over here thinking that the TARDIS doesn't operate properly if the Matrix isn't in it. But basically, House is meant to be that same kind of, like, weird bodiless consciousness that a TARDIS' spirit is.
I guess, kind of. This doesn't explain that explicitly, and even looking at what Neil Gaiman shared on that live tweet, he doesn't really go into it either.
Okay. Interesting. So, we have the moments where the Doctor and the TARDIS are chatting and he begins to realize who she is. And I love how she says, we've now reached the point in the conversation where you open the lock. And he just does because he believes her. Mm-hmm. I like that you said she's got a real Tim Burton-esque thing going on because she really does. And it didn't even occur to me while watching, but that's 100% what's happening here.
Yeah. Like, if they could have cast Helena Bonham Carter, they probably would have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, she's, familiar. I feel like I must have seen her in something else.
I looked her up. She's got a very extensive,
she's in
IMDb.
Gentleman Jack.
Yeah, she's the lead in Gentleman Jack.
Gotcha. I haven't watched that, but I've seen enough
either.
The commercials.
Yeah. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh yeah, I totally recognize her face from that.
Mm-hmm.
But she's done a lot of TV.
That is really funny, though. Okay. So, yeah, and she's got, like, there's at one point she's, like, sitting on the floor, and she's wearing, this, like, old-fashioned corseted dress, and her tits are just jacked up to her fucking chin. When I have a corset on like that, if I am sitting the way that she was sitting in that scene, I can literally rest my chin into my own cleavage. Mm-hmm. That's how high up in my face they are. And she's very nearly there in that scene, and I found it extremely distracting. God bless Matt Smith, who is standing over her for most of that scene. I'm sure it was difficult to keep his mind on things. So the Doctor is still trying to figure out exactly why this planet would have done this. This asteroid, I guess it's not a planet. And then they come across, he goes to the TARDIS and watches it disappear in front of him and realizes that some shit has gone very, very left. He's trying to call Amy on the phone and she's not coming through. And this is when he says, I really don't know what to do. And then we start on the psychological torture aspect, which is just so upsetting. And it's amazing that basically House takes advantage of, I believe, their affection for one another to torture them because of something that Rory says, which is, at least we are together and we're in the TARDIS, so we're safe. And I think that House zeroed in on the, like, oh, you find being together comforting. Well, I'll take that part away. And I'll do that physically. But then I will also mentally drive you apart and make you enemies. Which is just so upsetting. It's just so upsetting, guys. I cannot emphasize enough. And I love how slowly it ramps up. Because Rory's, the one that convinces the House, I keep wanting to say the TARDIS, but it's not, the one that convinces House to keep them alive, and says that it's because you want to stay entertained. And when they begin fleeing down the hallways, which, by the way, I said I wanted to see other parts of the TARDIS, and I am getting it, but, this does not count. Right? I just want everybody to know that.
Yeah, because you're only seeing the hallways.
I have made jokes about Doctor Who being a lot of, running panicked up and down corridors. Now, I'm not really putting this episode into that same category because it's just the corridors are what makes this work. They are not incidental to getting from one place to another. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like that to me. But yeah, if this were any other ship, it would feel the same. This does not feel distinctly TARDIS-y to me, other than the fact that House has some, dominion over it in terms of being able to, project illusions, I guess?
Yeah. And because it's a TARDIS, it seems like it's possible to mess with time, too.
Yeah.
And normally there's an anti-gravity, I think, or something that he turns off.
Yeah.
So, usually the corridors can go in all directions, and you stay what you feel is upright.
Right. Yeah, because there's what basically looks like an elevator shaft. And it's clearly, normally you could just step into that and just go down where you need to go. And they have to very carefully walk around it. And yeah, I don't know. This whole thing, it ramps up slowly because they wind up getting separated from one another by this door. And it's done very purposefully. You know that House, this isn't an accident. He's separating them on purpose. You see Rory stand there yelling at Amy. And she hears his voice coming from a different direction. And is like, oh, that's weird. And turns. And when she goes down this other hallway, Rory is sitting next to the door with his face in his hands. And jumps up and says, where have you been? And she says, I stepped through the door and came around the corner. And he's like, you've been hours. And she says, no, I haven't. And he realizes, oh, the House is fucking messing with us. But then you think that's it. And then the exact same thing happens again. And they get separated again. And she realizes maybe this is the exact same thing. And she turns and rounds the corner as she did last time. And Rory is 40 years older. And his hair has grown and he's got a beard. And he says, every single night they come for me and they hurt me. Amy, they hurt me over and over and over and over. How could you leave me? I waited 2,000 years for you. How could you do that to me? His acting is way too good. This rage and the way he pounds on his chest when he says, how could you do that to me? Is so very what I feel like he really channels feeling like you've been deeply betrayed by somebody that you never thought could do it. I just really felt it. I felt it when he starts screaming at her. I hated it so much. And she runs away from him and you can see how completely unnerved she is, even though a part of her knows that it's probably not real, she doesn't get reunited with present day Rory right away. So it's like, she felt like last time she got in this immediate confirmation that was an illusion, but she's not getting that this time. So maybe it is. Maybe it is this time, you know? And then when she comes around the corner again, and it just says, hate Amy, die Amy, kill Amy. And it's written all over, and there is his corpse just laying up against the wall, all fucking like shriveled away. Kill Amy, die Amy, hate Amy, all over the place. I posted about the fact that I had just watched this episode in the Mighty Network last night. And I think Austin Arminio said, it was messed up, but I have to admit, when I saw Rory's corpse, I started laughing because he is the Kenny of Doctor Who.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. Rory keeps dying. It's a problem.
Now, I will admit, I 100% get that complaint. But because I'm not genuinely worried about him here, it doesn't bother me. This isn't like them actually trying to make me think he died.
Right.
You know?
It's just, like, how many times has Rory died now? Because there was the first time that was essentially real.
Right.
Universe gets rebooted. Now he's died here. Was there one other time in between?
I mean...
Oh, yeah. The last episode.
I was about to say, there's his drowning. Yeah.
Yeah, he fucking drowned. So, like, poor Rory keeps freaking dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, like, you know, I'm glad it's not... Because, like, a female character, this... Like, I've seen this happen. So, it's kind of refreshing for it to be a dude, for a change. But, yeah, so she runs up to his body and she really clearly thinks that, like, maybe this has actually happened now, because if time can be fucked with, genuinely fucked with, who knows what can be done, you know? And she's crying and saying, I'm so, so sorry, and Rory comes around the corner, and I love that we see from his perspective, there's nothing there. It's, you know, he's looking at her crouched on the floor, crying, sobbing, not knowing why she's doing this. And then when she looks up at him and turns back around, it's all gone.
Yeah.
So it does this thing again a little bit later where the two of them are in this hallway. And for her, it's as if the lights have suddenly gone out. And he's like, she says something about like, what happened to the light. And he's like, what are you talking about? The lights are fine. And she says, he says, it's messing with our heads again. Just stay right there. And then we get this fucking horror movie sequence, you guys. This is so messed up. Because what's messed up about it is that it's kind of like not even for her benefit as much as the viewer's benefit in terms of like fucking us up. He starts telling her, I'm fine, come forward towards my voice. And she says, what happened? Where are you? And he says, I just banged my head. Just keep coming. And she's walking forward, and we see Rory's body on the floor laying in a pool of blood.
Yep.
As she walks by, but she doesn't see him laying there. So, like, this is for us.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that was part of what made this so, like, upsetting to me here, was the knowledge that the show is sort of, like, letting us know in this moment that they are fucking with us. That's them showing their hand a little bit and being like, oh, no. We're torturing you now. We're letting you think something has gone horrifically wrong.
Or it's the show letting us know that this is just a continuation of this torture on them.
Yeah.
Like, Rory isn't actually dead on the floor. This is just another house trick.
But why make it look like he is if she's not going to see it?
I don't know.
That's my point. This feels like it's for us, not her. Because she doesn't notice his body there. She can't see. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, that doesn't feel like a torture aimed at the two of them the same way, because it's not. He can't see it, and she can't see it. So that's for us.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so she, like, steps forward and puts her hands in the fucking ood beard. Dislike. I don't know how nephew got on here. Is he even really there?
Yeah, he's really there.
I thought he was, but I don't know how he got on.
I don't know, maybe House can just bring him there, because he allowed the other two to die.
Oh, that's true. So, we have the Doctor and the TARDIS, and she says something about sending a message. He says send it to Amy, and she says, which one is that? Is that the pretty one? And then sends a message to Rory, and when the Doctor realizes that's who she meant by the pretty one, he realizes that she means in comparison to him, I think.
Or just that because he says, send it to Amy, she says, is that the pretty one? He says yes, assuming that, of course, you're going to think it's Amy.
Right.
Not thinking remotely that anybody would be like, Rory's the pretty one. And when he looks, he's like, no, that's Rory.
The only reason I say in comparison to him, the Doctor, is because she grabs his chin and says that his chin is hilarious earlier. Which, correct, it is.
I thought of you when that happened, because we had a conversation about his chin when we were talking about him having a beard and how it improved his face. Yeah, thought about that. I also really, really want to know if that was an ad-libbed line.
Oh, if it was. I mean, I feel like you can't get that personal when you're ad-libbing, because that's just coming across as insulting.
Isn't all of it coming across as insulting? If Neil Gaiman was writing this episode and writes in the line about your chin, what is with this chin? It's funny.
Yeah, but it's
like,
one thing to be annoyed at the writer, and it's another thing to have to act a scene with somebody who just, like, to your face insulted you.
Maybe it came from Matt Smith.
Maybe.
You think he doesn't know about his own face?
His foot face.
I don't know if he would enjoy that description so much. But he probably recognizes that he has no eyebrows. He's got a very big chin. He looks like an alien. It's fine.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. I was drinking when you said that he has no eyebrows. I keep forgetting that, but he really doesn't. He does look so much like those Easter Island statues. Like, he really, really does. That was a good joke they made there.
It was. And he seems pretty game to play along with, like, yeah, I get it. Like, my face is weird.
So yeah, she sends a message to Rory explaining the way to get to the old control room and the passkey to get into it. And
can we not skip over what he calls her so that the audience doesn't get upset that we don't talk about what he calls her?
Yeah.
When she says the Doctor asks if she has a name of her own, and she tells him that he calls her sexy.
Oh, right. Yes. And later on, after Amy has said, "Did you wish really, really hard?"
Yeah.
And she introduces herself and says, "I'm sexy." The Doctor's like, no, that's not. And I really like that moment a lot.
And he also says something to her about, you're not very reliable. You never take me where I wanted to go. And she says, I've always taken you where you're needed. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, that is true.
And that comes up a little bit later when he's, she is not in a body anymore and he can't speak to her and he's very sad. But he says something about, like, well, take us where you think we need to go, and all of a sudden, the, what's the word I want? Dial? It's not really a dial. Is it a lever? The lever gets pulled, and he smiles because that's a signal that she is there, and she is listening, and she is continuing to do her job. But they do not get to sit and hang out looking at her cleavage anymore, which he is obviously very bummed about. I would like to see her come back at some point.
Yeah, she's pretty great. She makes a really big impression in one episode.
And I feel like this sort of wacky, I am not really human and I'm trying things out and experimenting with words and not really like understanding the impact of what I'm doing or saying. This is something that, you know, you see in a lot of different work, but it can be done really like, it can be very corny.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so glad. There's a line later where she's talking to him and she's like, a small word that means so much. And I was like, if she says love, I am going to fucking turn this off. And she says alive. And I was like, okay, you know what? That's good. That's a good one. I like it. There was a moment there where I was like, what are you? Because I feel like there are a lot of things that are just like, you know, oh, it's a robot and it's learning how to love. I don't understand. What is this water coming out of my eyes? Like, you know, that kind of thing that I'm just like, ugh. The only time that has been done well is on Third Rock from the Sun, when it was Sally and she started talking about how she was leaking and got really irritated about it.
Isn't Sally the human?
Oh, they're all human. They're all aliens in human bodies.
Right, but is Sally Kristen Johnson or is she Jane Curtin?
No, she's Kristen Johnson. Jane Curtin is Mary Albright.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
God, that show's good.
So good. Anyway, so yeah, I feel like that sort of thing, it just can be very trite and saccharine in a way that gets under my skin in particular because I have less patience than the average bear for that sort of thing to begin with. And I was just really glad that this did not devolve into that sort of thing, you know? So they have this like pass key in order to get into the room, and Amy realizes that it's not about just saying it. She has to picture what these words each mean. And so she has to stand there doing that while fucking nephew is very slowly and threateningly walking down the hall toward them. And they finally get through, and once they're in and they get the shields down, the Doctor and the TARDIS can catch up with them and land inside, because they have put together a sort of like janky TARDIS to follow them with.
They put together a TARDIS console using old TARDIS parts.
Right.
And where they send Rory and Amy is an old console room that's been archived. Because when we see the TARDIS when Matt Smith becomes a Doctor, it's different.
Yes.
So the console that we see that they get sent to is actually the console that 9 and 10 had. I
wondered that. When they run in there, I was like, this looks like the other one. It might not be, but it really looks like it. That makes sense.
So basically, the TARDIS rebuilds itself because there was a lot of damage done to the TARDIS after Matt Smith, or after 10 regenerated. There was a lot of damage done inside the TARDIS, so it had to rebuild itself.
Right.
And so what we're learning here is the TARDIS will archive its old equipment. But House didn't even know about that. And what Neil Gaiman wanted was to be able to recreate a really old console from like one of the very early seasons. But they ran out of budget. They weren't able to rebuild it. So they still had the old console from the previous seasons. It hadn't been taken apart yet. And part of the reason that still existed was because this episode was actually written for season 5.
Oh.
And they weren't able, for whatever reason, it either didn't fit or they weren't able to fit it in with what the plan was for the season. So they moved it to this season.
Okay.
And then a few details had to be changed because it was originally written to happen after Rory died and Amy doesn't remember him.
Oh.
It was going to take place at that point of the story. So the original story had an old console and no Rory.
So
and then when they
what would the
moved
torture of Amy have looked like without Rory?
I don't know if he might have had to change a lot of the story to when the story moved to a different season and when he could have Rory. He didn't give details about what that psychological torture, or if there even was. It might have been an almost completely different story.
Yeah, true.
But he did say that it was originally conceived for Rory not even to be there. And the end scene was going to be them burying Idris's body.
That's really funny because as she's telling him, like, you know, that her time is running out, I was like thinking, is she just going to like vacate this body and then they just have a dead body to deal with? And I felt like that seemed very un-Who-like. So
yeah.
Her dissolving basically into light was, you know, it felt much more on brand. But it's amazing that was like what it was really going to be originally.
He said the original ending set during the time period when Rory was erased from existence showed the Doctor and Amy burying Idris's body. It also would have revealed that the house had managed to survive.
Wow. Don't like that.
And the original opening scene involved the Doctor taking Amy to see the Beatles perform at Shea Stadium. The Doctor mentioned that he previously met them in one of his previous incarnations. There were several, this is what Neil Gaiman tweeted, there were several different several versions of the opening scene with the Doctor receiving the Time Lord message box. When the episode was first written, it was just the Doctor and Amy, no Rory. And then there were several different versions of this were written because there was also a sequence that featured Rory being trapped in the Zero Room, and I don't even know what that is.
The Zero Room.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There was a sequence involving the TARDIS swimming pool that was cut because Karen Gillan could not swim at the time.
This bitch can't swim at this age.
Well, I guess she can now.
I mean...
He said she couldn't swim then. Lord.
I don't know how you get by not knowing how to swim at this age. Like...
I don't either because my grandpa taught me how to swim before I'd even learned how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never not known how to swim. And I have to remind myself of that like not everybody learned how to swim at a young age, but it still baffles me that there are legitimately people who just don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one thing if you are somebody who, you know, is underprivileged and has not been exposed to being able to go to the beach or pools or whatever. But we're talking about Karen Gillan, who at this point is like a famous actress and would have every opportunity to be able to take advantage of that. You know, that's just so wild to me. What? Well, I guess, as you say, she has learned, or by now she has. I don't know about now in this, you know, point in her life that we're watching, but, so House begins to interfere with them. Now that the Doctor is back, he's like, how about if I mess with gravity? And they all like immediately fall to the floor. How about if I take all of the air out of the room? And then they all begin to choke to death. And he is saying, I could just kill all of you. And I really like, as we are hearing him say this, we see we see Rory seated with Idris's head in his lap, and he's monitoring her pulse with his watch because he's a nurse, and he's just, that's what he do. And it's just a nice little callback because I forget that he's a nurse. I like that aspect of his character being brought up again because I just lose track of it a little bit. So the doctor basically starts making a deal with House about how if you will just let us live and promise not to kill us, I'll let you into our universe. And Amy is just like, you cannot be serious. And I'm like, you need to trust this guy. And look at the way he's looking at you with his eyebrows all raised. He's obviously lying and has something up his sleeve. Amy, chill out. Rory says she's asking for water. She's burning up. And the doctor comes over and says, hang in there, old girl. And she says that she's always liked it when he called her old girl. And it's one of those things that, like, I feel like American culture, that would be seen as a real insult. You know? Mm-hmm. There's a thing in this book series that I just finished where she calls one of her friends old thing. Like, oh, calm down, old thing. And it's like meant as a term of endearment, but every time she says it, I'm just like, bitch, who are you talking to?
Well, that's because we live in a country that's obsessed with youth.
Mm-hmm.
And we think the word old is bad.
Yep.
Because it means that you're not worth anything anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that, I mean, the UK doesn't seem that divorced from American culture in a lot of ways. There are things, but it's surprising to me that is so different, you know?
Well, because in that phrase, like, old chap, old girl, old thing, it's a term of endearment. And it has been for a very long time. So the word old itself doesn't have that, like, nasty connotation to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just weird that we haven't adopted that. You know what I mean?
Well, we're a very callous country.
It's true, though. So the house says that it will, do what the doctor asks and make this deal. The doctor says delete 30% of the TARDIS rooms. You'll free up thrust enough to make it through. Activate subroutine Sigma 9. House says, why would you tell me this? And the doctor's like, we want to get back to the universe, and I'm nice. And House is like, well, I could delete this room, and then I would be all set. So why don't I just do that? And, of course, everybody else is like, what the fuck? He's about to delete us, doctor. What did you do? But the doctor is standing there, obviously like, all right, here it comes. He's about to do it. And all of a sudden, they are back in the regular control room. Mm-hmm. And it's a nice moment of the doctor being like, finally, and everybody else being like, we're not evaporated. Oh, well, that's neat. And he says, you could do that, but it wouldn't work. Hardwired fail-safe. Living things from rooms that are deleted are automatically deposited in the main control room, but thanks for the lift. That's a good bit of explanation. Mm-hmm. It makes total sense that would be built into the TARDIS. That, yeah, you can't just delete a room somebody's in. Like, that's like trying to just delete files somewhere and your computer asking you 6 times. You sure, though? Are you sure? Are you sure you want to delete it? All right. Well, I know you said you're sure 3 times, but we're going to, keep some backed up here anyway, just in case, you weren't totally sure. And it makes sense that with, actual life, a system would be built to be even more careful of that, So House tries to be like, well, whatever, I can kill you there too. No big deal. I've killed hundreds of Time Lords. And the doctor says, yeah, but I've killed all of them. And I was like, that's a rough line, man. I get that that's like you kind of being like a badass in the moment, but like really, that's messed up, honestly.
Well, it's almost like he says it because House thinks, I'm going to say this and it's going to hurt you. It's going to rattle you.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor's like, yeah, well, I killed all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not going to get me.
So the doctor says let's congratulate him on being a worthy opponent and begins to applaud and like grabs Amy and brings her to her feet to get her to also applaud. It's a real weird moment. And she like is beginning to like, you know, burn out, and finally she dies. And poor Rory is so upset. But meanwhile, the doctor is barely paying any attention.
He was paying attention. He was buying time.
I mean, he is, but like, it feels to Rory because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Again, poor Rory is being like, just treated like it doesn't matter by the doctor again, because he doesn't understand what's actually going on. And I just feel so bad because Rory feels things so keenly and is so sensitive and very invested and sincere. And then he just watches the doctor seemingly ignore him, really, you know? He's just said, she's gone. And the doctor's still talking to House and doesn't even reply or look at him or anything. And I'm just like, oh, Rory, sweetie, I really want you to like, I wish that the doctor could tell you what's happening here and what he's trying to do so that you wouldn't feel like, what the hell's the matter with this guy? He just he's doing his thing again. He's being the doctor again. So the TARDIS golden light comes out of her mouth and goes back into the main console. And when Rory looks down, her body is gone. And then we hear Idris speaking, and she's like basically just light standing behind him. And you can hear House saying, "What is this? Don't do this! Don't do this!" And the doctor ignores House in favor of talking to her about the word alive. And it's a pretty good word. I liked it. And then she says, "There's something I didn't get to say to you." And he thinks that she's going to say goodbye. But she says, "Hello. It is so very, very nice to meet you." And he gets all teary-eyed, and it's really sweet and very sad.
He also says, "I love you."
He does! And he says, "I don't want you to."
Yeah.
And then she disappears. And he has to act like everything's fine. He needs a handkerchief. He's all wet in the face.
So then Rory talks about what Idris whispered to him, which is that the only water in the forest is the river.
Right.
And they're like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be super important at some point.
You would think. It's also, you know, she said a lot of nonsense. But by the time she says this, she's not really speaking in, like, I'm trying to get a grapple on language. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it means something.
She kept repeating it. So, yeah, it feels like it has to be important. She said we'd need to know that someday.
Yeah. So the doctor's trying to explain why the TARDIS won't be able to speak again, and it just comes down to spacey-wacy. I mean, spacey-wacy reasons. Mm-hmm. He's trying to describe it, and they're just staring at him like he can't put it into words that anybody will really understand.
Yeah. Which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mind that. It would be weird, honestly, if he could get her to talk again. Yeah. Like, that's the whole thing, is that this was such an unusual turn of events. That if he could suddenly get it to, like, you know, occur, I would be like, well, then this didn't really mean that much, did it? That's not to say that if she shows back up that I'll be mad about it, but...
Right. But that also turns the TARDIS into, like, Kit from Knight Rider, or the computer in Galaxy Quest, which you maybe still have not seen.
I have not seen either of those things.
Well, Kit was a car. I think it was a Trans Am or something on Knight Rider, which was a show when I don't even know if it was new when I was a kid. I have no idea. But it talked to David Hasselhoff, who was the lead on the show.
Oh, David Hasselhoff.
Yeah. And then Galaxy Quest you need to watch. Just do it.
Is it a movie or is it a TV show?
It's a movie, and it's, like, one of the best movies ever. It's by far the best Star Trek movie, and it's not even a Star Trek movie. But most Star Trek fans will agree that it's the best Star Trek movie. It's great. And Owen should watch it because Sigourney Weaver is so hot in it.
Oh, yeah, he's a big fan.
And Alan Rickman is so funny in it. Please watch
Alan
it.
Rickman's in it.
Yes.
Is that the one that has Tim Allen in it?
Yes.
Okay. I've seen. Now I gotcha. Gotcha. Will it be as funny to me if I haven't watched Star Trek except for like 1.5 episodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I have barely watched Star Trek, and at that time I was pretty anti-Star Trek. Like, I was just like, no, we'll never watch it. It's not for me. And I went to see Galaxy Quest, and I was like, this is fucking brilliant. I need to tell my dad to go see it. Because my dad loves Star Trek. And then my dad saw it, and he was like, that was the funniest movie I've ever seen.
All right. Well, I forgot where we were when we started talking about Galaxy Quest. What brought that up again?
The TARDIS talking.
Oh, right. Okay.
It would just cheese it up, and it wouldn't be, like, I like that it's pretty clear that the TARDIS often has a mind of its own.
Definitely.
And I like that it makes decisions, and we don't know its reasons or its decision-making pattern. We just know that, like, they were going this place, and the TARDIS brought them here, and I like that it gives it a feeling of sentience, and then having her actually be real, like a person for a little while, sort of confirmed that.
Agreed, yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that I'm a fan of, is like rather than a big turnaround on an element of a show that has been there for us for a long time, that is permanent, is instead sort of like solidifying the concept or theories that we've had, and then going back to the show as it has been.
Yeah. Just
so that we kind of know that everybody's on the same page with that theory, but we don't need to make it into its own whole thing and maybe overcomplicate stuff a little bit too much, you know, if we add that element.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have Rory talking to the doctor about watching her die still upsetting him, even though he knows that it was like not a normal circumstance. And the doctor by himself is standing at the console a little bit later, and he asks, "Can you hear me?" There's no response. And he says, "Okay, so the Eye of Orion, or wherever we need to go." And then the lever flips, and everything begins to rumble, and he yells, "Hello!" Mm-hmm. And he slides around the console the way that he does, spinning around and around. I really feel like that set, it has to have been like the stage, for lack of a better word, that the main console's on.
Yeah.
Has to be like tipped in a certain direction for him to get that kind of slide effect. But
I don't know. He's like an elastic person.
Yeah, I'm like, if anything, maybe just the soles of his shoes are very slippery, and that's all it takes. I don't know. He's got a real sort of Dick Van Dyke vibe to him a lot of the time to me.
Yeah, he's very physical.
Yeah.
So, some working titles for this were Bigger on the Inside.
Oh, she says about humans. Right.
And another one was The House of Nothing. I'm glad they didn't use that one. The Doctor's Wife, I understand why it ended up being named that. Mm-hmm. But it was also very misleading because at the time we were all like, oh, it's about River.
Of course.
Gotta be about River. So I'm sure it was intentional. And it also makes sense because, if anything, the only constant thing in the Doctor's life is the TARDIS.
Right. Yeah, and I'm kind of glad that it wasn't River because her just being called the Doctor's Wife just feels so inappropriate.
Well, it minimizes
exactly, just
who she is down to respect. She's more. If she's a Doctor's wife, she's more than that. She's River fucking Song.
Yep.
Show her some respect.
So,
I wanted to do a couple more trivia things, unless you have
No, go ahead. Yeah. I was about to start saying hi to new patrons because I haven't done that in a minute, but I'll wait until after you're done.
This was originally planned as the 11th episode of Series 5, but because of budget limitations was delayed until Series 6, so that's why it moved.
Gotcha.
This is the first concrete confirmation that the Time Lords can change genders when they regenerate, and this was a deliberate addition to the mythos on Gaiman's part. He wanted to use a classic series console. We talked about that. Early drafts of the script featured more of Idris before having her soul removed, more backstory about the Corsair's relationship with the Doctor, more TARDIS rooms, the burial of Idris's corpse, and clear indication that House survived its defeat. So there was a lot of changes over time. And Neil Gaiman did say that a lot of it was budgetary.
Yeah.
I think the episode looked great. It doesn't look like they had to cut corners anywhere. So if what they cut corners with was like there was too much story, I don't have any real quibbles about this episode. Like whatever they cut out, it's not missing.
Yeah, I don't feel it at all. So works for me.
Yeah. Since this series was revived in 2005, any episode to feature a classic alien species would include a tribute at the end credits, with the exception of the Silurians for unknown reasons, crediting the alien's original creator. For example, the Daleks created by Terry Nation. This is the first episode to utilize this credit with an alien created in the revived series, specifically Ood, created by Russell T. Davies.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, it was an odd choice to have the Ood come back for this. I'm not totally sure if that makes sense.
Gaiman originally created a new alien for Nephew, but was asked to choose a previously established race when the budget didn't allow for the creation of a new monster.
Oh, and he picked an Ood. I'm shocked.
He picked the Ood.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I respect it. I love the Ood. And I loved seeing... I forgot... That was one of the things I forgot about this episode, is that there's an Ood in it, and I love the Ood. I
think the reason that I'm a little bit like, do we have to do this again, is because I feel bad for Oods always getting taken advantage of.
And the Doctor does say, another Ood I couldn't save.
Oh, that's right. I forgot he says that.
The Ood gets disintegrated when they merge with the TARDIS. A scene in the TARDIS junkyard would have Idris shut all of their chameleon circuits with a snap of her fingers was shot, but it was cut because of the restrictions of the CGI budget. And that's it.
All of her different fingers. How creepy.
I want to mention, because this is Doctor Who related too, I was looking at her IMDb, and she was on a show called Scott and Bailey, and it looks like she and the woman who played the woman from Midnight, the one who was repeating everything the Doctor was saying and then going ahead of him.
Oh, yeah, she's from, what is that movie? Because I remembered I recognized her while we were talking about Midnight. Oh, she's the wife on Full Monty. That's what it was.
Right. Well, it stars the two of them.
Cool. I would be interested in that. What's it called again?
It's called Scott and Bailey. It's two female detectives, one motherly, the other emotionally immature, have varying levels of success applying their eccentric outlooks on life and their police cases and private lives.
Huh.
It's got 5 seasons.
Maybe I'll check that out. I'm always looking for something that I can watch without Owen getting angry at me that I watched it without him.
Well, you can go into it knowing that the 2 lead actresses are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So that helps. All right, that's it. That's all I've got.
All right. Well, I want to say hi to new patrons, and I'm sorry, guys, that it took me so long to do it this time around. I'm basically averaging about once a month. So this month we've got, the first one is Squidward's grumpier cousin.
Oh, boy.
Lauren Fogarty Wolfa, Stormlighter Clan, Sam Pepper, Brendan Hone, Andrew Mullins, Susan Nixon, David, Emily Cooper, Caleb E., Nicola, David B., D. Williams, Alyssa E., Audrey McQuillan, Victoria, Kirthana Venkatasan, Nadine Widmer, and G.D. Solomon 30. Welcome to all of you delightful new people. I am so happy to welcome you to the Unspoiled family. I know we've been getting a lot of new patrons since we started covering Mistborn, so I hope that y'all are enjoying that.
How close are you to the goal?
We are at 95%. So
close.
Inching ever closer. And next week, Rashawn and I begin recording on Westworld Season 3. And
cool.
By the time we are done with that, we are going to hopefully have reached our goal and or be deciding on a different project. So we'll see.
Guys, I'm going to be very upset if it's decide on a different project. Just going to say. I'll be very
She's
upset.
going to hold all of y'all responsible.
Not any of you that haven't become patrons. You guys are rock stars. But seriously, $5, it's not a lot.
Yeah, I think that it's a reasonable, I mean, you know, you get everything early, and then you get 4 episodes a month because of the $5 show. And if you do $10, you get a postcard, and 20...
Those postcards are worth it.
The postcards are, except for the fucking USPS are ruining them half the time, but you know, what can you do?
True.
But yeah, so guys, you can become a patron at patreon.com/unspoiled. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/unspoiledpod, Twitter at unspoiledshow, Instagram at unspoiledpodcast. You can email me at unspoiledpodcast@gmail.com. And also, Avatar has recently been released on Netflix, which it's lucky timing, because if it had been released on Netflix 2.5 weeks ago, I would have been absolutely screwed. Owen and I have been covering it together as a special $1 per episode paid podcast to fundraise for our wedding. And we are both unspoiled. And when it was released on Netflix, that basically was seen by the world as a totally legit reason to post spoilers literally everywhere. And somehow we just missed it. We recorded on the finale last weekend and managed to not completely get spoiled before we reached the end.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in buying those episodes, we started off trying to cover 3 episodes per podcast, but that was too many, so then we dropped down to 2. It is unspoiledpodcast.com/shop, $1 per. It's pay what you want. So if you want to pay more in order to support us, you can do that, but $1 is the minimum. And
$1 per episode?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't remember exactly how many episodes there are of the podcast total, but I'm pretty confident that like $30 will get you all of the, I think there's about 30. It might be a little less than that.
Well, and it's not like you have to pay for them all up front.
Yeah,
so
true.
If you want to do one a week for 30 weeks,
yeah,
it'll get you through the rest of the year.
And it was a really fun show to cover. It has like some serious ups and downs, but they managed to pull through for the finale and had a really awesome finale, which made me really happy. And we're going to be doing one more episode, sort of wrapping everything up and taking questions from the audience if people want to ask, and discussing some of the shorts that apparently came out. And then Owen and I are going to move on to coverage of Watchmen. And we are figuring out whether we want to start off covering the the comics and then cover the HBO show. I think that's what we are going to do, because Owen has been wanting me to read them and had suggested that originally as what we should do until everybody wanted us to do Avatar. So the show is supposed to be excellent. It'll be a very different project because of like the way Avatar was. Both people being unspoiled is very different. Usually one person has gone through and, so it'll be a little bit different than what y'all are used to. But I think it should be a good time. So keep your eyes out for when we start that one. And like I said, Mistborn has already begun. So we're going to be releasing our second episode. By the time this episode goes up, the second episode will have been out. And I believe Miles and I are going to be forced to drop back to covering one chapter per episode because it was just 2-hour long podcasts in a row. It's too much.
How many did you do for episode 2?
2.
Okay.
The first one was 3 chapters. The second one we did 2 chapters, and it was still an almost 2-hour long episode. And we were like, all right, fuck it. We have to do just one next time. So, yeah, that's everything. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap?
No, I don't have anything to plug.
All right. Well, guys, thank you all again so much for listening. We appreciate you. Leave reviews, whatnot. And we will see you next week with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.